This walkthrough tutorial is going to be about how we can animate walk cycle in Maya. So first of all, there's kind of a couple different ways that we can do walk cycles. There are static walk cycles, and that's what we will be doing, where your character is walking in place. And then there's progressive walk cycles, where the character will actually translate forward as they're walking, as we do in the real world. Typically in movie studios, TV studios, you'll animate a character walking progressively because they'll have to interact with the scene and other characters, walk around objects and such. Typically in video games you'll animate static walk cycles because you'll have the game engine will kind of dictate the speed of the character, the direction, all that sorts of things. So there are pros and cons to each of them. So progressive walk cycles, where your character is actually walking forward in space, is in some ways more difficult because we have to make sure that we pay attention to the translation of the body alongside the translation of the feet, and having to juggle those all at the same time can be overwhelming at times, especially when we have to figure out, is the spacing between the feet even on each step, each contact pose. The positives of a progressive walk is it's a lot more dynamic. We can actually control where our character's headed. It's more natural. If they're interacting with the scene, then it's not going to look so weird if we're animating them progressively. Static walk cycles have pros and cons as well. Pros of a static walk cycle, I believe they're probably a lot simpler in principle, because all you have to do is, for instance, the body rotation, or the body translation, we don't have to animate the body moving back and forth, we just have to animate it moving up and down, and then we'll work on the hips, and then the feet, we'll just kind of go back and forth like this. They're also in some ways more beginner friendly because of the cons we mentioned of the progressive walk cycle. And then you can actually make it a true cycle if it is a static, because we can just loop it and watch the character walk infinitely. If we had the character translated in space as they were walking, if we looped it, they would jump back to here, go forward, jump back to here, go forward, jump back to here, go forward, over and over again. It would be difficult to watch that character walk consistently. Negatives of a static walk cycle is obviously if you want your character to interact with the scene, it can be very difficult, because if you animated your character static, you'd have to then animate this master control, which we don't like to do in animation other than sometimes in video games or just to get our point across, especially if you want your character to turn or change direction or slow down. It can really throw us off with our spacing and our timing. So for this project, as I mentioned, we will be doing the static walk cycle animation, and let me play blast this out so you can kind of get a decent idea of what we'll be doing. We'll just be doing the blocking today, and then we'll kind of smooth it out another time and polish it. So I'll just push play, put it on a loop a couple times. Alright, so I'm going to create a new file. Let's go to File, New. And if you'd like to create a project window by going to File, Project Window, and type in walk cycle, whatever, that's how I like to work. If you'd like to, for now, just import the rig and then you'll be just turning in your play blasts. That works as well. So I've already got my project folder set up. So I'm going to go to File, Reference, Create Reference. If you want to import, for now that's okay, but I'll go to Create Reference and I'll find my Stuart rig. If you'd like to use the Ultimate Bony or the Ultimate Beefy, you can use those as well. I'll be sticking with Stuart since I'm more comfortable with him. Alright, and then I'll hit F to zoom out here, push 6 to bring out my textures. Okay, a couple settings we want to make sure that we have. First of all, I'll put spacebar so I can see every view. I'll go to my show and uncheck joints in every single one of them, because we don't want to accidentally move Stuart's joints. Alright, Then I'm going to go down to my animation preferences down here. Make sure I'm in real-time 24 FPS. Under the animation settings, I'm going to stick to clamped and stepped, and that's what you'll be doing as well, because we're just going to do this in stepped mode. Blocking, we're not going to worry about the in-betweens or what the computer gives us. And make sure you're in 24 FPS. Alright. So, I'll select Stuart, and I'll go to first frame here. I'll hit S. We'll be using some picture reference here that'll be available on the CMCO folder. This is from the Animator Survival Kit. We'll be using this timing and the poses as a general guideline for this project as we animate pose to pose. Here's kind of a better example with the arms. So I'll have this off screen, but you can bring it up on your own screen if you'd like. So we'll be animating him from left to right. We've already got our keyframes set, and we're going to need to start off with our first contact pose. So in walk cycles, we usually have 5 or really 4 key poses. We've got our contact, where both feet are touching, and that's like when your foot is just barely touching or just barely leaving. And then the down, where that's the extreme down. That's the lowest the body will ever go during the walk cycle. The passing position, which is exactly what it sounds like. The up, which is another extreme, where the body is as high as it'll go, and then the contact with the reverse feet. So really for our blocking, we're just going to create those key poses, and we'll be doing them each twice, since we'll be doing full cycle where we'll start with the right foot forward and we'll end with the right foot forward. So following this picture as our guideline for timing, I'm going to go down to my timeline here, and this last box I'll type in 25 and hit enter. So we've just got our frame right there. Okay, so we're going to create our first contact pose. I'm going to start with, first of all, I like to turn off these IK controls. So I'll select this hip, go to FK IK controls, say FK, now those controls are gone. First go around, we're going to focus on everything from the pelvic bone down. We're just going to completely ignore the chest and the arms and the head for now. We'll come back to those. We're going to pose out the legs. Alright, so once again, if you need to have this open on your screen, bring that up. I'm going to have it off screen. The nice thing that we can do if we have a static walk cycle is that we can be very mathematical about this. It might sound boring, but trust me, it'll be very helpful. So for instance, I'll translate these feet out. Let's see, -3 for that foot and 3 for that foot. So in general, every time I see the feet planted, they're going to be spaced apart as such. Right, then I'm going to bring my right foot forward. Let's say I'll start off with 20 and see if that looks good. And then I'll bring this other one back, translate -20. Oops, sorry, not X. Z, -20. Alright, and we're going to make sure that we're in that actual contact pose. So I'll start with the back foot, and I'll click this foot roll control, bring it up to maybe 25. If you want to type in different numbers and experiment, feel free. And if you want to look from the side view as well, that can be very helpful. And then I'll grab this foot and I will rotate X about let's say -15 for now. Alright, so this stance is not working, right? So we're gonna pop this foot back, we'll say -30. Because of that, we're going to want to pop this foot forward, 30, and the Z. Alright, now this body, for the main body control, just keep in mind we will never be translating it forward or back. We will only translate it up and down and side to side. Alright, so let's kind of translate it down until this front leg is just barely bent. Alright, and it's still not a very great stance, so we'll adjust some of these numbers. Let's see here. Maybe I won't have the body translated down so far. Maybe I'll do 4.25, some arbitrary number there. And then we'll stick with 30 for that, but maybe the foot roll won't be quite as strong. Maybe do 15. And then likewise we'll adjust this rotation. Actually, you know what, in general, I think let's try something different. I'm going to delete that rotate X, and I'm going to stick with the foot roll. So I'll do foot roll negative, let's do negative 10. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. If you look from the knees down, you might notice that even then the stance looks a little off, and that's because we haven't rotated our pelvic control yet, and that is this control right there. So one thing with human anatomy, as we're walking, body mechanics, all that sort of stuff, our hips rotate, obviously, and that affects our pelvic bone and our legs. I mean, you can sing the elementary school song if you need to figure that out. So when the leg is back, it's going to pull the hip back. Let's rotate Y, I don't know, let's say 15. It's nice to have nice round numbers, I think. Likewise, the hip will also rotate back and forth like this a little bit in the X. It'll just do a little bit at first. Let's say 5 for now. Let's go back to our side view. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. I'm also gonna just for the sake of being able to see a little better, I'm gonna grab this hand here and just rotate that arm up out of the way. And this one too. Okay. So we're just gonna focus on these controls. Okay? So now we've got that I was on frame 25 by accident. Hopefully you were on frame 1. But we've got that set. Here's a nifty thing. Our first frame and our last frame, 1 and 25, are going to be the exact same poses. So if you were on frame 1 and following along, or if you're on frame 25, technically irrelevant. But just make sure that your keys are set, your auto key is turned on. If you select that keyframe while your controls are selected, like so, middle mouse, click on frame 25 or frame 1 and drag it to the other one, let go, and push S. Now look what happens. Obviously the arms popped back because I have to get rid of that real quick. Okay. So now if I select our keyframes that we're only focusing on for now, or key controls, on frame 1, frame 25, exact same thing. So now we're going to work kind of from the outside in, inside out, however you want to say it. Our next pose is going to be the next contact pose, but the opposite foot. And this is where the mathematical side of things can be very helpful. So I'll go to frame, according to our timing here, on this. Our halfway point is 13, and I'll select all these controls. I'll hit S, and then we're gonna basically take this pose and just reverse it. And there's a very nifty way that we can do this. So let's say I want to start with let's start with the pelvic control first. I'll go to the rotate X, and the rotate X is actually going to be the same because that's the forward and backward rotation, so we're going to leave that alone. The rotate Y, however, will change. So I'll just put a negative in front of that 15. Next, here's a nifty little trick. I'm going to select the blue foot, his left foot, and I'll go to frame 1, and I'll go to right click, copy. Then I'm going to select his red foot, go to frame 13, right click, paste, paste. See how it pops it back there? Pretty nifty. Obviously we'll have to change the translate X to a -3 so it's back over this way. Now we can go to frame 1 again, select the red foot, right click over 1, copy, select the blue foot, go to frame 13, right click, paste, paste. And obviously once again we'll have to change this, get rid of the negative on that one. Boom. Come on, there we go. Alright, so we can do that for a lot of our poses, and it's going to be very useful and streamlined that we can not have to re-pose things. We can just get a little mathematical about this. So if I flip back and forth, which you'll see, and it's very difficult to tell unless you see the shadows, I'll switch to a different view. The character is now walking to an extent, switching their contact poses. Alright, so now we're going to do the passing positions, which are going to be on frames 7 and 19. And so I'll go to frame 7, select all my keyframes that I'm going to be using, and my side view is a little easier. From the feet up to the pelvic control, hit S. Alright, so now here's where we can once again kind of use math. I'll start at the pelvic control again. So the passing position is halfway in between the two contacts. So we can kind of take these numbers here and extrapolate the difference. So for instance, the rotate X was at 5, then became, I guess actually that stays at 5. Okay, so 7, sorry. The passing pose is when the pelvic control will start to rotate back a little bit. So we'll type in -5 on the rotate X there. And there's some debate on hip rotations, and you can look up anatomy. Sometimes you can cheat a little bit in animation. So if you want to try out something different, feel free to try it out. So the rotate Y was at 15, then goes to -15. Halfway in between is 0. Lastly, this foot here will be lifting up, and because it's going to be lifting up, that's going to drag your hip bone down like that, right? So I'll go to, let's type in 5. We'll see how that works. Also, if you notice, the center of gravity, other than the feet are kind of weird, the center of gravity is not centered whatsoever. This character would fall like that. So we're going to need to translate the body in the X direction a little bit. Let's say we'll try -5 for now. We can always adjust it later. Alright, so let's look at the feet. We'll start with this foot on the ground. So this foot is going to plant, which means that we'll get rid of that foot roll, we'll zero it out, but it's also going to start sliding back, because essentially the foot's going to go back and forth like this in a static walk cycle. So what's halfway in between 30 and -30? Well, that would be 0. So we'll go to the translate Z, type in 0. And then we'll grab our other foot here, and this foot is going to be, as I mentioned, lifting up in the air and passing. Refer to the image if you need to get a good visual. So I will, we don't want to lift it up so high, but first we'll rotate it. So I'm going to zero out the foot roll, and I'll switch to the rotate X. And if we were to throw this into spline right away, you notice that there's some issues, and we'll fix that once we get to that point. But for blocking, we just want to worry about the posing. And the reason we're using rotate X instead of the foot roll while it's in the air is because foot roll will affect the knee, and the rotate X will not. So for posing purposes, better to use that. So I'll rotate X like 80, give or take. And then I'm a big fan of adding in a toe drag. So I'll go to the toe drag and I'll type in like 25, toe tap. I like that because I feel like it adds a little bit of life to the walk. So next, this foot is going to be going like this, right? I mean, both of them are, but this one is in the middle. So we kind of have to pick a spot somewhere around here, roughly. And I like nice round numbers, so I'll type in 20, and it's probably going to need to come forward more, or back. Actually, might depend on the hip, because the hip's going to start coming up, or the main body. So let's just zero that out. Go back to this foot, translate Z, we'll put at -20. How about that? Okay, so it looks pretty good. One other thing we might want to change: when the foot is taking steps, in general, I mean, everybody's different. Some people put one foot in front of the other when they walk. Some people take you know, nice wide steps. So get up and act it out, see what works best for you. I like to, when the foot is in the air, I like to move it over just a little tiny bit, like to 5. That way when he steps, it kind of has some life to it, has arcs into it. It's not just a straight line. So we are going to need to create the other passing position. Once again, we can do our nifty tricks of copying and pasting. So we will go to frame 19, which I believe is the next passing position here. I'll take a look at the reference. Once again, bring this up if you need to. Frame 19, passing position. And I'll hit S. Oops, select those controls. Hit S. Now I'm going to grab the pelvic control. Rotate Y is going to be positive 15 because the feet are going to be completely reversed. And hopefully you understand where I'm going with this. You can once again select the, I'll start with the red foot, select the red foot, go to 7, right click, copy, select the blue foot, go to 19, right click, paste, paste. And you'll want to make sure once again to take that translate, get rid of the negative on that foot. And then I'll go back to 7, highlight the blue foot, right click, copy, go to 19, select the red foot, right click, paste, paste, and then add a negative to that one so it pops out. And then we'll also need to, what were we at? 0. We'll need to 0 out the height on that one. And then let's look from the front view real quick if my button will work. And make sure on frame 19 to translate the body over opposite of what 7 was. So 7 was -5, 19 we'll type in 5. Alright, so now looking at just the poses we have, it's already coming along pretty well. We'll switch to the side view. We've got our contact and our passing. Alright, so what do we have next? We have our extreme poses. And the extremes are the down and the up. So we'll select all these controls from the pelvic control down. We'll go to frame 3, I believe, is going to be our first down position. 4 rather. Just checking the thing. Yeah. Perfect. Alright, so down, as looking at this picture, your foot's going to be planted. It's going to be sliding back since you're static. So we'll select all these controls, go to 4, hit S, and once again I like to start with the pelvic control. So now, here's an important thing to think about. As the foot is planting, the front foot, and as the back foot is pushing off, that's going to affect our hips, our pelvic control here. So, you know what, let's just kind of pick a halfway number once again. So, halfway in between -5 and 5 is 0, so I'll 0 out that rotate X. Then halfway for the rotate Y, halfway in between 15 and 0 is going to be 7.5. And if you don't want to type in these numbers exactly, that's fine. You can just kind of judge it. And then for the rotate Z, halfway in between 0 and 5 is 2.5. And ultimately, when we go into splines, we'll kind of be deleting a lot of these keyframes we do and just making one nice curve. But for blocking, we want to actually see what's going on. So that's the pelvic control. Then the the body will be rotated down as most as it will go. And it's not going to be too much. When we walk, we don't actually move up and down too much, so I'll just do like -8. Alright, so now onto the feet. So first of all, this front foot is obviously going to plant, so I'll zero out the foot roll. It's also going to be sliding back since we're doing a static walk cycle. So we'll just once again pick a halfway number, so 30 and 0, so 15. And then this foot will be lifting off for the most part. It'll be pushing off like this, so I'll go to the foot roll and I'll type in like 50. Also, I like to make that that toe bend a little less, so I'll go to the foot brake and I'll lower that to like 25. That looks pretty good. I'm also going to need to move this foot back. Let's say -45. Right? So now we look at that. We've got our contact, we're down, our passing. Let's do the other down. So I will select all the keyframes right here, or all the controls from the pelvic control down, hover over the frame 4, middle mouse drag over to 16, because that's going to be our next down position. I'll hit S, and once again we will be reversing the controls. So I'll select the pelvic control, go to rotate Y, add a negative in front of that, go to the rotate Z, add a negative in front of that. And while we're at it, I think I forgot, if we select this, the main hip control, go back to 4, we need to make sure that our body is actually getting ready to move to the right here, or to the left, his right. So I'll just do translate in X, -2.5, and then I'll hop back to 16. Type in 2.5. Alright, so once again, hopefully by now you can figure this out pretty good. We're going to be copying and pasting. So I'll select the blue foot, go to 4, right click, copy. Then select the red foot, go to 16, right click, paste, paste. And don't forget, we have to change our translate X to negative for that foot. Then we'll go to frame 4, highlight the red foot, right click, copy, select the blue foot, go to 16, right click, paste, paste, and on the translate Z, get rid of that negative, and there we go. Super easy. So now we've got our contact, down, passing, other contact, other down, other passing, contact again. So all we have to do is add one more and we're done from the waist down. It's as simple as that. So what we need is our extreme up position right here on 10. Right? So I'll go to frame 10. I'll select all these keyframe or all these controls from the pelvic control down, hit S, and we're gonna add that in. So first of all, let's say I want this body first to kind of get an idea of how tall I want it. I'll translate it up like, not very much actually. Well, let's start off with like 1 or something. See how that looks. We can always adjust it later. And then this hip control, or the pelvic control, it's going to, since it's the passing position, the pelvic rotating in this direction is going to zero out. The up position is going to zero out because this foot is going to be coming up here, pulling that along with it. And then the rotate Y is going to be getting close to being forward like this. So was it -15 on 13? We'll go back to 10. Type in -7.5 because it's halfway in between the 0 and the 13. Right, and then the rotate Z is going to be running down too, so I'll do 2.5. 5 on that, hit enter. So I think I'm good on the pelvic control. We just have to pose these feet now. So I'll start with that planting foot, because that foot's going to be sliding back now to get into position for what we have at 13, right? So we need it halfway in between 7 and 13. So halfway in between those, translating wise, is going to be negative 15. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a foot roll in there. Let's say 10. We'll try 10. Nice even number. Next, this foot right here is going to be getting ready to land, right? So let's kind of just roughly position it. I'll get rid of that, or at least lower that toe tap, maybe to like 5 or so. And then, since I like nice round numbers, let's make the translate y a little lower, because as we take steps, it's useful to stand up and act this out. We don't lift our feet very high. We are exaggerating this for the sake of animation, but I'm still not going to have them take humongous steps. So I'll do the translate y at like 15, and then bring it forward. I think mathematically is going to be 20. And then the rotate is going to start getting ready to come down like this, right? So I'll type in, yeah, 20 sounds good. Alright, and there's our up. That's it for that pose. We just need to select all these controls again. Middle mouse, click on 10, drag it over to 22, and hit S. Now we've got that up, but we have to reverse it. So once again, I forgot this pose right here, the up, that will be the body. When it translates left and right, it's going to start coming down toward the ground. So on 7, it's translated as far this way as it's going to be. So on 10, that was negative 5. On 10, it's going to be starting to come back. So I'll type in negative 2.5. Go to 22, and I'll type in 2.5. Alright, and the pelvic controls. So here's where we're going to reverse it. On frame 22. The rotate Y is just going to be positive instead of negative. And the rotate Z is going to be negative instead of positive. Right? And then once again, hopefully by now you know the drill, I will select the blue foot control first, go to 10, right click, copy, then I'll select the red foot control, go to 22, right click, paste, paste, go to the translate Y, make it, or X, make it negative, then I'll go back to 10, select the red foot control, right click, copy, select the blue foot control, go to 22, right click, paste, paste, go to the translate X, make that positive 3. And just like that, we are finished with the legs. So if you want, turn off your NURBS curves, frame it up all good, right click, play blast, options box, make sure your options are all high quality, uncheck save to file. We don't want that right now, we just want to get a quick look at it, hit play blast, and we'll watch our pose and see if we like it from the hips down, see if there's anything that jumps out as an issue to us. So if you want, I think you can go to View Loop. On a Mac it's probably Command L, on a Windows it's Control L. Press play, and it looks really good. You might notice that there's one hiccup, and it's probably very difficult to see. And what it is it's the foot sticking. And the reason is because we have our same pose on 1 and 25. So it's playing those two frames consecutively. So when we play blast this, we're actually going to want to play blast 1 to 24, just like that. So I'll do that one more time. Hide my controls, play blast. And then we can watch it loop endlessly, and it should look nice and smooth. other than the fact, we're in step mode right now. Yeah, that looks good. So hopefully yours looks something like this. The hips look a little funky, so I might go in there and see what I messed up, because I think I may have on the pelvic control messed something up. So we'll start at frame 1 and I'll just kind of look. And see what the problem is. Oh, there's the problem on frame 22. I thought it looks wrong. Okay, 1 second here. Actually, you know what the problem was? It's on frame 19. I made a mistake. I must not have accidentally changed the numbers. So on rotate X is going to be -5. Rotate Y is going to be zeroed out. Rotate Z is going to be -5 as well. And now we've got the foot actually catching up to itself. Alright, so if you followed along with me, you may have had the same mistake. So you'll just have to kind of go back and see if the numbers make sense. If you need to, select the control, go to Window, Animation Editor's Graph Editor, and select one rotation at a time. And you should see something that kind of resembles a pattern. So this kind of goes up, down, and up, and down, and up. Rotate Y, goes down and up. Rotate Z, goes up and down. Perfect. So I'll consider that good. So now what we're going to want to do is figure out the upper body. So if I select everything from the abdomen control up, we should only have a keyframe set on frame 1. If for some reason you set keyframes on anything else, then just shift click over here and delete it, or double click the whole thing, right click, delete. Just make sure on frame 1 you have a keyframe and nowhere else for now. Let's start with the spine first, and we'll make it nice and simple, because the spine's going to kind of subtly rotate like this as we're walking, and it's going to rotate opposite, right? So on frame 1, we'll go ahead and say, let's type in like -10. We're going to do a nice strong rotation. Likewise on 24, we can hit S as well, and we'll just copy that frame. And then 13, or halfway in between, would be the opposite, so +10, and there we go. So we just have to figure out our breakdowns. Our down and our up are going to be kind of working its way from -10 to +10, so that would naturally be at 4, it would be -5, and then at 7, it would be +5, I believe. Let's see. So -10, -5. Actually, it's going to be 0, because at frame 10 it's going to be. So go to 7, select those 3 controls, 0 it out. And at frame 10, that's when it'll be +5. And then at 13 we already have it, +10. 16, it'll be working the other direction, so 5. And 19, 0. 22, so, yeah, 22. It'll be -5. And I just noticed if you need to, make sure you pop this back out to 25. And we accidentally, if you followed along once again, mistakes happen, I have a frame on 24 instead of 25, so I'm going to shift click that, drag it over. So make sure if you have those selected that there's a keyframe on 25. Alright, so now we've got our twist in the body figured out. It's kind of a energetic, sassy walk. We're going to figure out the arms now. The arms are some of the hardest things to figure out. In some ways it won't look very good in blocking, and we'll end up kind of having to fix it in spline, and that's okay. Also, if you've been following along, please make sure to save. Just Control S or Command S periodically. So if we look at our picture here, we can kind of see how the arms work. The contact, the arms are making their way down. The down, they're fully spread out. The passing, they're kind of by the sides. The up, they're starting to spread out again. Contact, continuing to spread out all the way to down. So the best ways to do this is to just kind of guess it. You know, look at those drawings and then just pose in what looks good. So I'll start with, on frame 1, I'll start with this forward arm here. And hopefully you know by now, just by walking naturally, when one foot is forward, your other arm is forward. That creates a sense of balance. So I'll just kind of pose this arm forward roughly, maybe go to the side view. Maybe type in some numbers there that are nice and even. So how about, oh, I don't know, just sticking closely to what we got here. 35, -20, and -75. Kind of arbitrary. We'll look from the front. It's not that great, so we'll adjust it. You don't have to have even numbers. It's not really that big of a deal. We will want to do something with these shoulders, though. You can't ignore these shoulders. So the shoulder is going to rotate on the Y forward. Come on. There we go. We'll do like -5, just a little bit, and then rotate Z. So if you remember from class, we like an animation when our hips are going one direction, for our shoulders to go the opposite direction. So since the shoulders, or since the hips are pointed up in this direction, I'm going to bring this shoulder down a little bit. Because we had, yeah. So maybe -5. And then this one we'll do the opposite. We rotated 5 and 5 again. And maybe we'll bend this elbow just a bit. It kind of already is, so maybe we'll just do -5. See if we like that. Maybe a little more, -10. And we can work something into the wrists if you'd like. So just something that looks kind of nice. We're not going to worry about the fingers right now at all. Okay, now this other arm, it's going to be kind of back. You have to switch views to see what looks good. Keep it nice and even. So maybe 30, 20, and -75. See how that looks? Sure. And then the elbows I'll also bend at -10. See how that looks? Yeah, not too bad. Okay. If you'd like, we can work on the head while we're here too. Or the neck rather. So I'll grab the neck control and I'll just, from the front view, I'll kind of straighten the head out a little bit. Also, I know since the body is about to go down, the head is eventually going to kind of tip back. So I'll leave it straight for now on frame 1. So not perfect, but in general we kind of have one arm forward, one arm back. So now we'll want to make sure that it's probably easiest if we just select the whole character, hit S again to make sure everything's locked down, middle mouse drag over 1, over to 25, and hit S again. Now your frame 1 and 25 are absolutely, whoa, are absolutely the same now. Okay, so now what we need to do is go to 13 rather, and switch the arms up. So we can just once again kind of eyeball it. One easy thing to start with is the shoulders, because we can just reverse that, so +5, +5, and this other one, -5, -5, and then just kind of eyeball it. I'm not going to get too mathematical with the arms, I'll just see what looks good, put one back, bring the other one forward, and then grab that neck control, just straighten that head out a little bit. Alright, so now we've got our contact poses. So let's go to the passing poses next. And our passing poses are on 7 and 19, I believe. So, looking at our not that one, sorry. At our picture for reference, we can kind of get a decent idea. So for the passing, the arms are more or less both along the side of the body. So I'll go to the shoulders and I'll zero out the rotate Y on both of them. But I'll leave the rotate Z maybe 2.5 each instead. So 2.5. And -2.5. Alright, so I'll grab this arm, I'll go to my side view and I'll just kind of manually drag it around, grab the elbow, straighten it out a little bit, maybe adjust this hand too. It's because it's going to be dragging this direction. Yeah, it's going to be dragging backwards, so we'll pop that fist forward a little bit, rotate it in our front view so we understand what's going on. Alright, so then we'll grab the other arm, the red arm, also straighten that one out a little bit, switch back and forth between your views, just kind of see what looks good. You don't want to make it exactly like the other arm. This hand is going to be dragging in the opposite direction. And then the shoulder, the elbow is going to be dragging a little more too. Alright. So next what I'm going to do is I will select these controls, the shoulder, then I'll hold shift and I'll select the upper arm, elbow, wrist, and I'll shift select the other arms, the other shoulder, other upper arm, other elbow, etc. And then make sure you're on frame 7, and then middle mouse drag over to 19, hit S. Now on the next passing you kind of have the pose roughly set already, you just have to make a couple adjustments. So for instance, this arm will straighten that elbow out a little more, and then we'll drag the arm, or the fist, in the opposite direction, and then this one will bring the elbow forward a little more, drag the fist in the opposite direction. I might also bring this arm forward just a tad, bring this arm back just a tad, just so they're a little different from each other. You may also want to revisit the neck on 19 and straighten that out a little bit, and then go back to 7 and straighten that out a little bit. Alright, so now if we go back to pretty much any of our views and scrub through here, we've got it pretty good. So we just have to add in our extreme up and our extreme down for the arms, and we are good. Might add in a little bit of head bob, and we'll be done for the blocking. So I'll select the arm, go to 4, which is the down. If you remember from the picture, the downward pose is the most extreme pose for the arms. So I'll grab that arm and I'll just rotate it forward a little bit. Maybe bend the... looks like the... based on this, it looks like the elbow doesn't bend much, but I'll try straightening it out and see if that works. Maybe bring that wrist over. And then grab the other arm, drag it back, straighten that elbow out, and then drag that back too. Right? We also can't ignore the shoulders, which are going to be at their most extreme. I'll get rid of the rotate Z, since our hips are barely rotated, so you might add in, let's see, it was at this way, so we might bring it up a little tiny bit, maybe 2.5. Rotate Y is going to be way forward though, so maybe -10. Then we'll do the opposite for the other shoulder. 10 and 2.5. Right? So it's a little extreme. You might want to undo some of that. But this is animation. It's all about exaggeration. Once again, I'm going to select the shoulder, upper arm, elbow, and wrist when you hold shift. And I'll select the other arms as well. And I will go to frame 16 and hit S. And I'll do the opposite for these arms. Drag this one back, straighten that elbow out, drag that wrist back a little bit. If you need to, go back and check at frame 4 to kind of get a decent idea if you flip between the two. And the shoulder, obviously, is going to be opposite, so 10 and 0. Or was it, actually it'll be -2.5. Make sure to switch your views so it doesn't look too weird. So I might rotate that arm inward a little bit. Looks okay. Then this one's going to jump forward. Might straighten that elbow out a little bit. Drag that wrist down a little bit. Make sure we touch the controls on the shoulder, and -10 and -2.5, I believe. No. Yeah. Okay. Bend that elbow up. Once again, like I said, go back to frame 4 to kind of compare them. Close enough. Alright, we are almost done. So now we're going to go to our extreme up, which is going to be very subtle differences for the arms. So if we look at our picture here, the extreme up, it's kind of got the strongest bend on that back elbow, and then the strongest straight on the front elbow. Whoops. Alright, so our up pose is on frame 10. So I'll just kind of pose in that shoulder. So since the hip is angling this way, I'll bring that shoulder up, say 2.5. And it's going to be rotated, whoops, rotated in the Y, 2.5 as well. And then this is where the elbow has a lot of bend in it, so I'll grab this one, bend it a decent amount. Let's switch to views and just kind of see what looks right. Make sure to drag that wrist downward. And that looks okay. Then I'll bring this arm forward. Straighten up the arm a little tiny bit. Drag that wrist a little tiny bit. We can't forget the shoulder control, which needs to go up to 5, I believe, and forward by -5. And we are on the home stretch. Let's see. So we need to go to our final extreme up on 22 rather, and I'll pose these arms opposite of what we had at 10. Okay, so grab that shoulder control on 10, go to 22, and make it the reverse. So -2.5, +2.5 on that blue one. The red one's going to be 5 and -5, I think. Alright. So this back arm is going to be back here. Bend the elbow pretty good. Drag that wrist down. And grab this arm, bring it forward. Rotate it inward. Stretch the elbow out a little bit. Bring this wrist down. Alright. Let's go ahead and final touches for the blocking. Grab the head control and go to frame 4. The head's going to drag up a little bit like this. Then on frame 7 it'll drag downward. Frame 10, and let's see, I'd have to actually probably roughly zeroed out. Frame 13 it'll be dragging upward. No, 13 is where it's mostly straight. So we'll drag it upward on 10. We'll adjust this in the splines anyway. 16, drag it upward. 19, drag it down. And then 22. What did we do on 10? 22, drag it upward. Alright, so if you followed along pretty well, hopefully you paused if you needed to. We should. Oh, his head's kind of freaking out there. Let's actually give those pretty good numbers. So I'll go to frame 1. I'm going to use the period key on the keyboard, or the caret key. I'm going to just type in smaller numbers. So how about -5, +5, -10. Now that's going to be, it's going to continue to drag down. So that was actually going to be +10. Then zero it out here. Then sorry, -5 on 16, +5 on 19, then 10 on 22, rather -10. No, sorry, once again, +10. Alright. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I mean, when we go into spline, we'll offset that so it looks a little more overlappy. So I'm going to turn off my NURBS curves. I'll start off by, in my side view, right-click Play Blast, or sorry, one more time. One quick thing. This box down here, type in 24 because we don't want to see the duplicated frames. Now, right click, play blast, options box, make sure it is not saved to file, and then I'll hit play blast. And you should have a pretty successful walk cycle in stepped mode. So we'll go to frame 1, and I'll make sure to view loop, hit play, and there's some weird stuff going on with the arm, so I might need to see what I messed up. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of your motion in stepped mode. Looks like on frame 13 we don't have the proper poses for the arms. That's right, okay. So 13, it's going to be the opposite of frame 1. Which it looks like we did for the most part. And we could get mathematical about it, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So 13, this arm's going to drag back, this arm's going to drag forward, the elbow's going to be a little more bent. That's good enough. Alright, so I'll get rid of my NURBS curves, play blast that one more time, get a better sense of how it looks in real time. Loop that, hit play, and there we go. Not perfect, there's some hitches, but in general it's a pretty functional walk cycle done in blocking. Let's check it out from other views as well. We'll go to the front view, turn off my, there we go, play blast. And if yours is, if you've already play blasted all yours and it looks pretty good from all views, go ahead and just turn in your play blast. And what we'll be doing next is taking this out of stepped mode and polishing the curves and just making this look like a very well rounded, very clean, kind of perky, vanilla style walk cycle. Alright, so it looks good. So one last thing. Let's say you are working in video games or personal project, or you're just showing off a walk cycle and you decide to do a static walk cycle. You can still technically animate this curve control here. So I'm going to double click on my timeline, right click, delete with that selected, so there's no keyframes on it. Go to frame 1, hit S, and then what we can do is we can go to frame 4 and we can move it forward a little bit as long as the feet line up. It's a little bit of work. You'd have to kind of turn on your grid and zoom in, and you can go keyframe to keyframe and just kind of line it up. And if you do that, then eventually you could have your character walking forward in space. Now the general rule of thumb with these controls is to set it and forget it. In this case, you can animate it, that's fine. Alright, so let me know if you have any questions, and then just have this file, your file prepared to go into Spline for the next video.